You just lost another gamer's killer. Maybe it was because of sweaty blocks, competent caretakers, care pads, it doesn't matter. All your damage gets erased, and you end up with not a single kill. So you decide, if you can't beat them, why not join them and plot to take the least amount of damage possible? But wait, what is the least amount of damage a civilian can take in Die of Death? And to do this, we're going to need to lay down some rules. To conduct my experiment, I'll be playing normal rounds using one killer and one civilian, because I have nobody else to do this with. To record the damage tallying, I'll be doing a simple calculation. The civilian's HP the frame before the attack, minus the health of the civilian after the duration of this attack. Due to the tallying method, healing will be essentially considered as negative damage. However, remember that any attack that heals overall is still considered invalid. Any status effects that an ability inflicts must finish their duration before we tally damage. For example, in the absence of the previous rule, and if Caretaker was hypothetically the killer, the ability would be minus 20, not minus 10, because we wait for the regeneration effect to end. So we must wait until said statuses are removed before tallying damage numbers. Some other rules include no map hazards that inflict damage count as an attack to be tallied on their own. They can only be used during the duration of other killer attacks. Some map hazards include Teacup Paradise, the bridge teacup that does 30 damage, base plate, the water that does 8 damage per second, and temple, the Draco Boulder that insta-kills. To start, we should really make a baseline for low damage. What are some low damaging attacks of the base killers? Since the process of lowering damage is quite tough, let's actually start with the highest damaging move and work down. The highest damaging move is, to no one's surprise, Detonate, 30 damage. But how do you lower damage, you may say? The only way to is to have some kind of immunity or self-healing. Well, good news, because Block is both. So with the rules out of the way, let's begin. For those who don't know, Block is an ability that gives the civilian a night helmet and changes their shirt color to dark grey. They raise an arm up and get into a blocking stance for 2 seconds, slowing them down and stopping them from sprinting. If the user receives damage, with a few exceptions while the ability is active, they nullify that damage, heal 10 HP, gain a speed boost for 2 seconds, and apply lock to the killer for 2 seconds if they're close enough. If block ends without being triggered, the user becomes vulnerable and receives locked to themselves instead. The ability has a 40-second cooldown. But straight away we reach our first posing question: how do we take any damage if we're going to block? No matter what attack we take, if it gets successfully blocked, we heal, and that makes it impossible to tally any damage. However, there is a key quirk of block that proves to be pivotal. Block doesn't prevent effects from triggering, and this is where things start to get interesting. If we take damage from an effect, we might be able to get damaged through block. And this is where the bleeding status effect comes in handy. While bleeding, the target takes 1 damage every 0.35 seconds, for a total of 10 damage over a 3.5 second duration. Interestingly, the hit markers from this effect give the killer a slight advantage as bleeding darkens the screen. The important part of this, however, is that bleed continues even after avoiding the initial hit, which is exactly what we need. So for example, for Series Cleave, this attack does 20 initial damage and 10 bleeding damage. Blocking this attack heals 10 damage and makes us bleed 10 damage afterwards. This does 0 damage overall, it cannot be tallied. However, what if we were to block after taking the initial damage? What would happen then? Well, this is what would happen. We take the hit, 20 damage, then we try block. We heal 10 damage and take that 10 bleeding, 20 damage overall. And this actually works in game, because block can trigger and bleed. However, in practice, it's a slightly different story. Most, if not all of the time you attempt to do this, the results don't line up. This is one of those cases where something that shouldn't work does. Let me just show you what I mean. As you can see, the civilian takes 19 damage instead of 20 damage. We've broken what should be a fixed damage value. But why is this? My theory about this is that blocking gives you a very small number of iframes, making you immune to 1 tick of bleed. Since bleed ticks every 0.535 seconds, the duration must be somewhere between 0.35 seconds and 0.7 seconds of invincibility. Now that is clarified, we can update the graph with our new findings. Moving on to other healers, we have CarePad, Loveshot and Hotdog. CarePad heals 2 HP per second, so to calculate the number of times they can heal, we use the following formula. Activation amount equals floor of duration divided by cooldown. Substituting these in, we get floor of 3.5 divided by 1, which is equal to 3. This means we can heal 3 times in the 3.5 second duration of bleed. 3 times 2 equals 6 HP healed in total. So this means that we take 24 damage overall from a cleave. The timing seems like it would be pretty tight as well. However, I have a confession to make. I couldn't record this segment due to CarePad being so rare. There are 11 abilities in the game, and the game doesn't care if the same 2 abilities appear in the deck, so the total amount of unique decks is equal to 11 squared 121. Since CarePad can happen in either order, and you receive 3 cards every game, the chance is 6 over 121, just below 5%. Considering I've spent like 3 hours testing and only got CarePad 3 times, it's safe to say that I'm just extremely unlucky. Anyway, with the mathematical excuse out of the way, let's get back to the video. Side note, I actually did get it later while recording some missing footage, as you can see here. The damage is actually 22, somehow we managed to sneak an extra heal in. Loveshot heals 15 damage on stun, 13 minus 15 is 15 damage taken. This is significantly easier to time than CarePads, thankfully. Hotdog heals 15 damage for 15 damage taken. Here the windup can screw you over if you're not careful enough. Now these seem good, but they're really way more limited than block in terms of optimization, for now at least. Moving on to Taunt. The civilian stops and rapidly waves their arms back and forth for a 3-second windup. After 1 second, large hitboxes expand in front of them for 2 seconds. Hitting a killer causes the ability to end early with 0.5 second end lag. The user to gain a force field for 2 seconds, the killer gets slowness for 2 seconds and becomes indicated to all civilians for 5 seconds. Additionally, images of Taunt scroll right to left across their screen, effectively blinding them. If the ability misses, the user's immobile in end lag for 2 seconds while waving their arms, and a sad trombone plays. The ability has a 25-second cooldown. Now since Taunt gives 2 seconds of iframes, we can block a portion of the bleeding. On my first try, I managed to take 25 damage. But with better timing, it is perhaps possible to taunt before the initial damage even hits us. So let's calculate. If we were to taunt the killer right before they cleave, we would block the initial damage and be invincible for 2 seconds. Since bleed happens every 0.35 seconds, we can use the formula from before and find that we would block 5 damage, meaning we could hypothetically take 5 damage from a cleave. Now since this is quite precise and took a long time, here's a montage. Montaging time, yeah. As you can see, we have now broken the barrier of double-digit damage. Now here's another quirk of bleed. It can't kill. It stops when the target reaches 1 HP. Therefore, to take advantage of this, we must find the lowest HP we can get to with Pursuer. Pursuer does not have any attacks that make our HP not end in 0, so we're stuck working in multiples of 10. The lowest HP we can get to is 20 by M1s. This is actually not good because a cleave would kill, invalid because we cannot tally if we die. Writing our HP as a variable x, what we really want is HP that is more than 20 and less than or equal to 30. This would make us take x minus 20 minus 1 damage. The minus 1 is because of the 1 HP quirk. Even getting to 30 HP would be good, giving us 9 bleeding damage. 1 cleave plus 2 M1s can get us to 30 HP, meaning this can work. Some civilians also have 90 HP. This means we can get to 30 HP just by getting M1 3 times. This works on bonus pad. It also works on hot dog because we can increase our max HP by 10 and then get hit by an M1 to have 90 HP. Block because we can get hit once by an M1 and then block a second to heal 10 and reach 90 HP. And even Love Shot because they start with 75 HP, we can get hit once and heal to have 70 HP. Even though this isn't 90 HP, we can just take 2 M1s to end up at 30 HP. However, this actually isn't that good. Only 29 damage. We're really being limited by the initial damage we take from Cleave. Still, before we move away from Pursuer and look for another bleeding killer move, I would like to address the elephant in the room, Block. Block can take 19 damage from delayed blocking, so 2 delayed blocks is 38 damage, meaning they could potentially reach 22 HP. However, in reality, this isn't possible, because that would require 2 blocks. Block has a 40-second cooldown, and there are only 90 seconds in LMS, including the 15-second intermission when the round starts. This only leaves 10 seconds for the killer to reach the survivor, and even if this was possible, the killer and the block would both be on cooldown after the second cleave block, meaning there simply is not enough time. Anyway, with that out of the way, let's get back to how we're still being limited by the initial damage of cleave. The only way to remedy this is a killer that can apply bleed without that drawback, and the only other killer that can inflict bleed to others, not Harkon, is Badware. And this is where damage drops significantly, so keep up. Badware's Rift ability requires placing a PC and has a short cooldown, 15 seconds to teleport and 25 seconds to place. Keep in mind we need to fit them into LMS time. Since they can be used once without worrying about cooldowns, it should be fine. It allows you to teleport to the computer, destroying it and dealing 10 bleeding damage. This means instead of getting into range 20 to 30 like before, we should just aim for the lowest HP possible, but not 1 because that would immediately cancel the bleeding. Bolt increases based on PC count, plus 5 per PC. This means that damage can end in multiples of 5. This is good because we can potentially reach 5 HP and take 4 damage from a rift. So here's the setup that results in 4 damage. We do a firewall bypass, 4 M1s, a 15 damage bolt, and then a rift. This setup takes like 12 to 17 seconds, not including travel distance. This setup also works with any civilian that has 100 HP and can be easily modified to accommodate other HP ranges. Here's a bonus pad as another example, but just know it can work with all the other setups we've accounted for thus far. So far we've reduced damage significantly, but we can still go lower. Taunting the killer when they appear out of a rift consistently results in 6 damage taken, and 3 damage is possible. Here's the setup by the way. This is how I'll be showing long setups from now on. We have to do this twice, and with the help of a 15 damage bolt, 2 damage is possible. To To do this 3 times and receive 1 damage, we must do the Rift Taunt before the LMS even starts. However, in practice it's too precise to do thrice here, requiring 5 seconds walk distance. I forgot to factor Taunt's cooldown into all of this, but luckily it's the exact same as Rift. Coincidence? Yes. We can also just take 8 damage from a taunt to end up with 2 HP and 1 damage. This also works on Pursuer, however it must be adjusted because it's impossible to avoid the initial damage from Cleave and take 8 damage. We must take 28 damage instead. Blocking the initial damage from the Cleave is necessary for the last hit, where we tally damage. Now we've been focusing on reaching minimum HP, but what about maximum HP? When testing in a private server, I found that blocking a Rift and healing to max makes you take less damage. In mathematical terms, blocking a Rift when you've taken X damage heals you to max assuming you were close enough to full HP, applies the 1 damage iframe, and gives you 10 minus X plus 1 total damage. So hypothetically, a 1 damage block is possible. You need to block when you've taken 8 damage. Healing to max reduces healing, meaning all blocks that didn't work because of healing now do work. But we don't care about that old news, right? This is the point where healers make a comeback. Block has the same healing as one of the previous healers, Love Shot. There are no iframes. The shot must land at exactly 9 damage for 1 damage taken. There is only 0.9 second wind up, meaning that you should actually fire the shot at 7 damage and take 10 minus X total damage. As Love Shot is so rare, I didn't have time to practice for 1 damage, I only managed to get 3 damage. Then I got it, but I forgot to record for a second and I only got a video of my HP being at 74, which I think is enough given that it's very obviously possible. Hot Dog can also do this. Despite their larger heal, it has no effect on the result. They can still take 1 damage. They need to finish eating at 9 damage to take 1 damage, reaching 99 HP. At least that's what I thought, but in reality, because of the 5 max HP increase, this is technically healing. We need to eat the hot dog when we have taken 4 damage to heal it and take 6 damage. Due to the extremely long windup of hot dog, you need to eat the hot dog just before the rift. This is insanely hard to pull off, but luckily I still managed it. There's no buff for Carepad's current strategy, but they can still avoid the initial damage for less damage overall and only take 4 damage instead of 24. However, if we really want to optimize Carepad, we need to think differently. This whole time, Carepad could have just healed by 2 and take 1 damage from the rift by having 2 HP. So we can easily get Carepad to 2 HP and take 1 damage. Here is the setup. However, in my case, I performed this feat while not expecting it, requiring absurd amounts of improv. I was sweating so hard I swear during this, my heart was racing more than during a pre-LMS. Therefore, I almost completely ignored that. Here's what I did. Badware used Bolt with 1 PC to deal 15 damage, Carepad now had 50 HP. Then I placed a Carepad and healed by 12, 62 HP. An M1 then got Carepad to 42 HP. A Rift and a Bolt with 1 PC put Carepad at 17 HP. Rushing a Rift with 1 HP put them at 2 HP, taking only 1 damage from the next Rift. As you can see, it really is quite tight and I almost sold, though I did sell when trying to record the previous Carepad segment. So after all of this, here are the final results. Block, Hot Dog, Love Shot, and Taunt, as well as Carepad, only take 1 damage. Other civilians can take full damage with our generalized setup. However, since we did say we can take map hazard damage during the duration of the attack, we could use the duration of Bolt's Ragdoll to take damage from baseplate water, another general setup, albeit map dependent. The water does 8 damage per second, and the Ragdoll timer is 2 seconds for Bolt, meaning there's a hypothetical 16 damage. However, this leaves us in the water after we exit the Ragdoll invalid. Additionally, there's another issue with this footage. Try and find it by yourself. The water actually does 12 damage per second, not 8 damage per second. The wiki must be wrong or something. The water does 70 minus 15 minus 37 damage. The civilian has 70 HP at the start, 15 damage from the rift which equals 55 HP, and 37 HP after taking damage from the water, meaning they took 18 damage. If the water does 3 damage every 0.25 seconds as we've now confirmed, the damage would be 24, however the result is less. This is probably because of the upwards knockback of Bolt and the airtime of the civilian. While testing, I found a ragdoll glitch on the bridge to take 21 damage. If you ragdoll on the edge of the rising bridge, you can take the water damage, and it stops as soon as you exit the ragdoll. This is probably because of the torso entering the water while ragdolled. In the clip, the civilian starts at 85 HP and ends at 49, meaning with an M1, a 15 damage bolt, and a 10 damage bolt, they would have 4 HP and take 3 damage from Rift. I only have footage of the bolt, not the full setup, because this being map dependent and extremely hard to pull off makes it almost not worth the universal 1 damage decrease. And with that, we come to the end of the video. Thanks for watching my first video to the end. If you want to see more content like this, please like and subscribe, because my upload schedule is going to be like 1 video every 6 months maybe. Now I can finally stop stressing about the Dive Death update and play it and enjoy it. Yay. Anyway, why are you still here? Go and live your life. You need to live of life. Don't die of death. Stay great out there. Bye.